hello and welcome to my cellar once more. And a special hello to the Seven Winds on Okinawa, who are going to be playing a game with me again. Oh my, 8th, 9th time? Perhaps even the 10th. I'm not sure. We've played quite a few times. And that's, of course, on my Wheel of Blame, which I play online on my Zoom channel. And you and up to 6 of your friends could do the same. It's $90, up to a 4-hour session, up to 7 players. The more the better. Try it out. You might find it's fun. Others have. All right, let's get going, shall we? All right. I owned a Dragonbone when it came out. I quit using it when we noticed that the D12 option would roll 10, 11, or 12 every time when the battery was running low. I got some good damage on my players for a while before we noticed the trend. Well, yeah, golly, the whole thing about being random is keep a good battery in it, huh? It's a little tiny electronic clock. It needs juice. It needs juice, and wow, well, I would have enjoyed the conversation around the table when the players said, hey, wait a minute. A question, or perhaps more of a pondering. A few of us game geezers at the local hobby shop were chatting about the golden days of D&D and how people would buy dice and boil the things so the bad dice would sink or float, depending upon the faulty member of the geezer doing the recalling. Was dice boiling for quality something that actually happened, or has 45 years of hard labor addled our brains? Thanks, and we love the channel. Well, I don't know about boiling. I do know that there was something about floating, and if you dropped a die, and it involved a thin, a smaller, like a liqueur glass or something, taller and that so it didn't tumble. The idea was that if it fell down and it always came up, say you're using a 12, you're checking a 12-sider and it always comes up 7. Well, whatever on the other side of the 7's heavy. So that was a theory, at least. I'm told what we used to do when we get a 5,000 die order in, we'd roll them down gentle inclines and separate them by how they came up high and low and kept coming up high or low, and then we had dice that we knew would roll high or would low lie, but roll low or roll high. But then Luzaki and led the way, and others came out with much better quality dice. Boiling them, I tell you, I wouldn't have trusted the plastic in some of those early dice to be boiled. Certainly not the soft impact ones. I would have thought that might have been able to distort them. Now, the high impact plastic, I never heard of anybody doing it. I've heard of many strange dice rituals involving selecting, cherishing, nurturing, and destroying and punishing. Many. Years ago, somebody told me he had become a fan of Roman history, and so he would decimate his dice every once in a while. They just weren't rolling him good. He'd take them out, he'd line all the others up, and he'd smash the offending die with a hammer. And no, he wasn't a lunatic. He went on to be a very successful individual. It's just, everybody has superstitions. Every game player. And I don't care if it's Yahtzee or baseball. Baseball's a game too, and we all have our superstitions, whether it's about socks or dice or whatever. I think part of sport is indulging in a little harmless superstition. Whatever gives us a little confidence or a little edge. And gaming is a sport, mental. We're not sweating all over each other and trying to throw each other to the ground, just mentally. I guess somebody's brain might have got a little addled, or maybe just confused over the years. Never heard of boiling. Never did. I knew a college student who did his with liquid nitrogen and shattered it when he dropped it on the slate table in chemistry. I'm with you about no desire to experience the elemental planes. When I first ran Temple of Elemental Evil back in the day, I just omitted that whole section. Yeah. If that's your bag, who am I to say no? I just never had the desire. And in a later comment, somebody goes on and on and on, and I guess that's fine if you're into that. It just left me cold, as the saying goes. Left me cold. Imagination is the heart of RPGs, and the rules mechanics need to support the setting presented by the GM. I don't think modern, newer players understand that rules can stifle the experience, kill a setting, and bring a game to a halt if they don't work for the game style setting being played. Nor do they have the advantage of opening up magazines with lots of different games and ideas for those games, and then later seeing their GM use ideas not in the book. Many are used to an RPG experience in which a computer sets all the rules, no reading the rules, wandering through images versus imagining them, and playing to win as an individual more than a true cooperative experience from each other's mind. And that's a very important. We all, if I could draw, I'd draw all these people sitting there with their eyes closed or open, made no difference. They'd all have a thread of thought that was meeting in a balloon that was the setting. I mean, that's part of what I've always loved about theater of the mind. An example I've used before, if you describe to the players that they're in a vaulted cavern that's covered with tiny reflecting lights, crystals or flecks of mica or whatever, and that's all you tell them, every one of them's going to see what they remember from having seen a reflective cave, a glittering cave. Most of them will have, those who haven't will imagine. That's what we're doing, is imagining. And they aren't all the same one. It's not like you're saying, oh, the angel chamber at Carlsbad Caves, or whatever. No. You're just describing a cave. Stalactites, stalagmites, and they're seeing them in whatever. Whether they go back to Journey to the Center of the Earth, a really old, I don't know, it might have been a Disney movie, or something much more recent and or more elaborately staged. Doesn't matter, because in the picture it all kind of blends together as to where they are. All right, back to the comment. And yeah, the comment about they're used to if they come to fantasy gaming at a table after playing what passes for fantasy gaming on the younger game systems, or games for systems designed for younger players, yeah, they're kind of come into you in lockstep, regimented, never having read the rules, just gone, because who does? You go in and you play and you learn and you start over and you learn. Okay, let's pick this back up. Many are used to an RPG experience where the computer sets all the rules, no reading, And yeah, they want to win individually instead of being part of the team. It is much more egocentric because the nature of the game was you against whatever, however many generations of computer games you want to go back. I mean, in my 4 iterations of Age of Wonders, the original one was incredibly crude compared to today. But it was one player. You couldn't hook into the other players on the net. You couldn't have 2 controllers. No, it was one player. And so, yeah, they were egocentric. But I think if presented with the benefits of, hey, isn't this a whole lot more fun when we're all doing it together? I think for some that may take a little while. I think for others they may take to it like ducks to water. Oh yeah, this is fun. Team players will do that. People that picture themselves as jocks, mental, physical, sports, whatever, they're going to be a little more difficult. I was talking with Jim the other day about what happens when you're running a game at a con and somebody at the table asserts themselves as the leader. That's the first problem. Second problem is, what if they're a jerk? And the third problem is, what if they're not that good a player? How do you handle that if you're running a game? Or you could have the same, if you're in your campaign, you say, okay, fine, take over until they get messed up. Now, you hope it's them that gets messed up and they don't get some of the other party messed up, bad, grievously wounded or killed. All right, that's one way to handle them. I have come up with a new idea. And for those running pickup games, particularly with people who know each other, or some of them, these two know each other and those two know, and this works where they're going through pre-gens. All right, it works in a game where you're running with pre-gens, particularly. They're comparing each other's play style preferences for what the which pre-gens are available, etc., etc. Have them, by vote, elect a leader, what we used to call a caller, the only person that was talking back and forth with the DM. It was much easier to concentrate back then. And, of course, we were all greener back then, too, so that's probably why it was easier. And then, at any time, tell the players in your convention game, or your pickup game, or game day game, or whatever, that twice during the game, they may call a conference stop time. And they'll stop time in the game, and they'll have another referendum on who ought to be the leader, and vote out the jerk. And stress that before the game begins. That it's secret ballots all around, but vote out the one who's being a jerk. Vote them out, and if they don't behave, they'll be similarly punished, or handicapped, or in some way they'll find their behavior to be detrimental to their well-being and safety and health, and share of the loot and share of the burden, etc. But anyway, that's what I'm going to do. Because this guy was such a total jerk. And he was I can't go into any more detail. Even though he was a jerk, those of you that played in my last game at the last Gary Con will know who I'm talking about. But I didn't name any names so nobody can get on my ass. Okay, let's pick this up back in. Okay, all right. Then playing to win is an individual more than a true cooperative experience from each player's mind. Thus, rules and exploitation of rules is their go-to, versus trusting the GM isn't trying to win, but trying to present an adventure in a setting they help create. Rules equal security. Imagine and trust equal insecurity, which is difficult for many. Luckily, my friends trust. Even when their PC dies, that is not my goal. I notice the younger generation we have, with the younger generation, we have to get them to the imagination spot and let go of the video game thinking. Also, they really have a hard time visualizing off of description only at first. Yeah, it's a skill. Okay, I'm a boomer. All right, my children had more books than video games. Though there were, but they were very crude and pixelated back then. More stick figures than the voluptuous elven babes you see now, or the horrifying monsters, for that matter. They had a combination of the two. The video game part was not real heavy. Their kids, however, hit the much better graphics, much more gore and violence and stuff like that. They hit that slice. So I can see that as a problem, a hurdle to be overcome. How do we do it? I don't really. I guess it would. We can't go out and convert en masse. We can't do that, but we can convert one at a time at our tables or at our games. And I'm of the opinion that the players should not know every number. They should not have everything memorized in their head. Oh no, that's clearly a class 5 monster, an armor class 5 monster, and I've got a such and such a sword, and my strength, well, tough. If it didn't hit, that's because it isn't exactly what you thought it was. Mix it up a little. Get them to learn to play by the seat of their pants and make quick decisions. Just an idea. All right. Okay, interesting that you use the D10 for initiative instead of the Dungeon Master Guide's D6. When I lived in Alabama, I played with a group heavily influenced by Luzaki. We used the D10 for initiative and a few other combat changes, different from the DMG 1E, long before 2nd edition came out, that were in the 2nd edition. I always thought Lou had an influence on 2nd edition, but I see you played that way too. I think when I made my switch one day, I just decided I'm going to do it this way. I think the primary reasoning was that with a D6, there was 6 outcomes. With a D10, there's 10. There's a finer gradation, a finer division of the 1 minute round. If 6 were 10 seconds, well, the 10 were 6 seconds. And so there was more. In my combat, unless the bad guys, the opponents, initiated, I don't allow squaring off against and picking an opponent necessarily. Now, sometimes, yes. But when it all begins, it's a big swirling melee. And in the 10 system, it replicates that feeling better. Because a couple of the players go, and then a monster goes, and another player goes, and you're already past 6 already. And if there's half a dozen monsters and 7 players, okay, so it gives more of a fine tuning, more variety, more latitude, if you will. It's an improvement over the old chainmail system. Okay, and so this individual goes on. We played that any spell that had a casting time of 1 round or less, the spell would go off in that round. However, if a mage rolled a 3 and cast a 3-segment spell, it went off on segment 6. The caster was hit and on say segment 5 and took damage. The spell was foiled, used up, and had to be restudied. He didn't have to die. In theory, an initiative below 1 and above 10 was impossible because everyone was allowed a full round of action no matter the roll. But if you rolled a 3 and did something for 11 segments, it went off on segment 4 the next round. No new roll needed. Yes. And that's one thing that 10 allows you to do, is lap over to the next turn. And it might happen that in the lap over, in that next round, you may actually get to do 2 actions, depending on die roll and sequencing and whatever. But it is theoretically it is possible. It's not theoretically. I've had it happen too many times, both to my favor and against my favor. 10 makes it easier to do that. All right, here we go. I've been reworking your psionics from 1st edition for my campaign. Well, my psionics were not in 1st edition. My psionics were in the supplement. And as everything in the game had happened to it, as it went through editions, corners were knocked off, edges were rounded, things were changed a little bit, tweaked here and tweaked there. But to go on. Along with the psionicist class, presented early on in Dragon 78. Well, that was a long time after I was gone, and I take no credit, nor do I even like I don't even like the idea of a class who's a psionicist. That's comic book crap. And it also added grand arts. Okay, yeah, here we go into comic books. Now, I'm not knocking comic books per se, but comic books aren't D&D. Now, if you want to play something like Heroes or Superheroes or something like that, you can go into all the comic books you want. Was just wondering why you restricted some powers from certain classes to learn, or restricted the powers features by which class was utilizing them also. Cell adjustment. I don't remember that term, cell adjustment. Why? Well, because I'm one of those true old-timers who does not believe that every player character can do everything or should be allowed to do everything. Otherwise, we become crude knockoffs of some ideal. Player characters should be unique. Not everybody should be able to do all the same shit. The only exception I have made in my play over all these years is with clerics and their, what I like to refer to as prayers. I think I've given them a much more, in my world, my opinion only, a much more logical rationale for what they do. I have never liked the idea of clerics doing spells. Spells are associated with magic. Maybe we were too squeamish to use prayers. Probably a good idea when the satanic panic hit. They're praying to the devil! You know, okay, so anyway, that may have been it, come to think of it. But anyway, not every player character should be able to do everything. What's the fun in that? Turn out a regiment of stormtroopers. Just the way That's one of the reasons I don't like all the player classes. One of the many. But not all characters, not all classes, not all subclasses should all be able to do the same things. No. That's why. I've been running 5e lately, but most of my players would disagree. I've stripped out most of the options, no feats, fewer spells, no subclasses, and limited the classes and races to the 7 you get in Mulve, Cook, from 81, plus a few optional variant classes for the stuff that's in AD&D. There's been persistent grumbling from the 2 guys who have played 5e before, but everyone nevertheless seems to be having a good time. I'll admit things would run smoother and faster if I was just using my old school homebrew system, but it's still way better than vanilla 5e, and I can actually evoke the gritty, deadly, human-centric setting without worrying about some dragonborn paladin or dwarf wizard showing up. Yes, not everybody should be able to do everything. Are there dwarves who practice magic? Probably. But why would they possibly want to interact with any other race? And what kind of magic are they doing that might even be any good to a human? Anyway, off the question, sorry. Dragonborn Paladin, there you go. There you go. Just what everybody needs. I can take or leave the base system of 5e, it's fine. It's the player options bloat that really ruins it for me. Yes, exactly. Bloat. 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 If an individual has a basic understanding or has played a couple of times a role-playing game, I don't think they should know the rules before they sit down and play. All right, here, I'll cash the age chip. When I went back to Carbondale in the early fall of 74 and told my game club, oh, we got this new thing we're going to be playing. And then I spent a couple of weeks learning to understand it myself and drawing up some ruins in that. And then I sat them down and I said, okay, you're all going to roll up a character. And they rolled up numbers. And then by the numbers they had, what were they best suited for? No rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling. If you had I think I said if you had two really crappy numbers or 3 numbers, they could do them again. The whole character had to be 6 in a row. And then you decided what you were suited for based on your numbers. And, okay, we're going to, you guys are all adventurers, and we're going to go find, I don't even remember what the first adventure was I ran. But we're all going to go do this, and I'm explaining to all these other college students. All right, we're going to pretend. We're going to roll dice, and you're going to tell me what you're going to do, and I'm going to tell you what happened, and we're going to have grand theater in here, or something to that effect. And it was like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And within the second or third week, I had 17 people that wanted to play at one time. Because it was so novel. I didn't load them down with a bunch of rules. They kind of learned what happened as they went along. All right, you're going to swing at that giant ape coming at you. Roll a 20-sider, 14. Oh, you hit him. You didn't have to know that you needed only an 11 to hit him. You just knew that a 14 did. And the next time you chopped at something and you rolled a 14 and it didn't, well, you figured out they were tougher. And that's the way we taught, we being those first couple of hundred people that bought copies of the game and took them back to our respective game clubs and hometowns and what have you. That's how we taught newbies. And then as we got into the play, then and only then did the framework really become necessary or even involved in the continued play. Would that I could sit down with a whole bunch of players and give them a whole bunch of monsters that they've never seen before. And I've done this. Give them a whole bunch of monsters they've never seen before, so they have no idea going into it. Oh, you only need a 12. No. They might be cream puffs, but you don't know that until you meet them. The cream puffs might be holy terrors, but you don't know until you meet them. That's what we need more of to instill that theater of the mind. A quick update on the lost adventures of Gary Kahn. After enormous obstacles, both of us getting sick, my partner Don getting much more ill than I was, much more seriously ill than I was. And then to top it all off, an EF3 tornado takes out the FedEx building that has our board stock in it. It is being put together. He is working on it. All the pages have been printed. We're now assembling the board stock covers. Then they'll be stitched. The covers are fixed and mailed. Hopefully, by the middle or the end of the upcoming week. I'm not promising that, and I'm sure Don's doing a much better job of keeping the Kickstarter supporters appraised of our progress. It's been a cursed progress. He got sick, I got sick, he got sick, I got sick again. An asshole who's soon going to be penniless, we are certain, dropped a dime on us twice and got our paper stock tied up in customs out of spite. And if I had 100% proof other than the 92% that I feel I have, I'd sue him in court but there won't be anything left when Hasbro gets done with him. So we're plugging away at it, and we have a new collaboration, and Don's publishing a new set of, I'm going to be working on I'm going to edit a real rules light introduction. I think it's going to be called something like Sabers and Sorcery or something like that. Real small rules light introduction. And I'll be up in Michigan in July at WizardCon. And that's about it. Yep. So I guess until next time, Dodala Govi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller. The curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree,
High as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Curmudgeon.